breaking barriers and bridging the gaps between patients and doctors. Welcome to Brainstorming with the Docs and your co-hosts, Dr. Glenn Harrison and Dr. Kolby Condos.
All right, everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Brainstorming with the Docs. I'm Dr. Kolby Condos with my co-host, as always, Dr. Glenn Harrison. What's up, bud?
I'm doing well. How was your evening so far?
Good, man. Had some dinner on the patio, enjoying the last few days of summer. Before...
No snow flying yet over there?
Not yet.
You didn't have to shovel a spot out yet?
No, I didn't have to shovel the patio so I can enjoy the weather.
Yeah.
Up
until there's snowflakes in Minnesota, it's still patio weather, right?
Even then, it's like still pretty patio weather. It's got to be quite a bit of snow for us to abandon the outdoors.
Just pull your beanie down.
Pull it down just a little bit and put your hoodie on, right?
Yeah. So probably I imagine with all that cold weather, it probably kind of makes you want to pucker up.
Oh yeah, a little bound up.
Yeah, a little bound up.
So today we are talking about constipation. This is something that we get asked about very frequently in both of our clinics, and we figured that we would provide a little insight on this today. If this is your first time watching or listening to the podcast or telecast on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe and turn on notifications and share this information with anyone that you feel might get some value out of the content. So without further ado, let's talk about constipation and GI stuff.
Constipation. Yeah, it's one of those things that we wouldn't really talk about at the coffee shop and exchange bowel movement habits with our friends. Usually. Well, I guess everybody has different kinds of friends, but it's definitely one of those things. And really, what is constipation? And then we'll get into its importance and, problems that result from it. And because we get these questions so often, it's very, very important. Everybody thinks their bowel movements are normal unless they're very, very severe. And they might not have to be very, very severe to be a problem. So constipation is really where you're not having at least one bowel movement a day. And of course, vegetarians, there's a higher plant fiber diet. There's going to be a faster transient time. So they could have even 2 or 3. That could be normal for them. But everybody should feel some relief after they go. They should feel like their body is emptied. That is, I think, and we know when we feel that way versus a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, or just not feeling satisfied that we're emptying. So why are we talking about constipation other than people ask us all the time? Why is it important, Dr. Kolby?
Well, it's important because obviously our GI tract is what absorbs all our nutrients, right? And if it's not working at the appropriate rate and it's not, basically turning over and like removing all the toxins and stuff like that, at least daily, then it can basically open the gate to other more serious complications. If you have increased transit times where you're a little bit constipated, it can actually affect your intestinal permeability. So then all of a sudden you can develop a leaky gut. You can have bacterial overgrowth as a consequence of constipation. You can get like fecal impaction, which is basically, it's as bad as it sounds.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of it and you got to get it out of there. And you can actually, if you are constipated enough, you're not going to the bathroom enough, you can actually cause permanent damage to your enteric nervous system, which is actually the nerves that control what's called peristalsis, which is like the contraction of the muscles of the GI tract that helps you move that bolus of food and that fecal matter out of your body. So
exactly. So kind of wrap our heads around this enteric nervous system. It's, your digestive system, your intestines have this network of nerves wrapped around like a spider web. And these nerves communicate with the gut. The information is coming from the brain and help squeeze the intestines to some extent to constantly move food through. If the intestines get stretched so much from not having a bowel movement, that stretching, what we understand now, can actually cause permanent damage to those nerves. And then you're not getting that communication. So it can create more bloating, more bacterial overgrowth, even more constipation.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. And it makes you feel terrible. That's
Sure.
the biggest
I think
reason it's important.
Yeah. And I think anybody can appreciate that. And we can get used to, missing a day here or there, but if it's consecutive days, we just won't feel like ourselves.
Right. I mean, it can cause anxiety, depression, fatigue, like that general feeling of malaise, exhaustion, like it's all not very good stuff. There's a lot of studies that show how important, actually there's a highway from your gut to your brain. It's called your vagus nerve, right? And there's a lot of studies that show that like gut permeability and the health of the gut can dramatically impact the health of your brain too. So actually, I think we did a podcast on this.
The brain gut connection. I think it was number one that we
might have
did.
been. It was up there,
Very
like at
first
least
one.
in the first 5 or 10. So
that was 70 or 80 episodes ago. A long time ago.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. So when there is a severe constipation, there's I'd be very confident to say there's probably going to be some sort of neurological disorder or emotional disorder associated with it. I think it could be a brain issue that's playing into this. So what other causes? I know we talked about bacterial imbalances can play into this. And then you talked about something, and I thought that was interesting: suppression of the urge to evacuate the bowel. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so I actually had a patient that did this. It was a younger patient. He wasn't even in his teen years yet, and he was super embarrassed, paranoid, whatever you want to say, about using public restrooms. So he would suppress his urge to go to the bathroom while he was in school. And actually, he developed constipation secondary to that because like we talked about, his enteric nervous system just wasn't firing like it at the frequency and rate that it should. So then all of a sudden it became like from where he was just suppressing that urge to go to the bathroom to all of a sudden his body wasn't naturally creating that urge to go to the bathroom. So he wasn't evacuating his bowels. So
wow. And it can also, of course, diet plays a role into this. And some people listen to this. Well, what should I eat for constipation? I actually get this question. It's like a food sensitivity, a food allergy can play a role into it. A digestive challenge with a food. It doesn't even have to be an allergy or sensitivity, but just maybe you have a harder time to process dairy and it might sit or it might go through you. So digestive disorders can do one of two things. It could make you constipated or make you have diarrhea. There's variations in this, but foods can be a factor. It's almost always to some extent a factor in constipation. There's also neurological disorders and injuries and traumas and concussions. I know you probably see that, Dr. Kolby, on how those can play into constipation. Sometimes it can play, brain injuries can create diarrhea, but it could be the other way as well. And then, there can be hormonal dysfunctions, a lot of metabolic hormones, adrenal hormones, thyroid hormones. If you have a thyroid dysfunction or hypothyroid, you'll probably lead to more constipation than diarrhea. So a lot of variables that play into constipation causes or mechanisms, and they got to be, I don't know, navigated.
Investigated at least to figure it out why, right? And I think that a lot of times we just look at it and it's like, oh, I'm a little constipated. Well, I must have eaten something. And that might be the case, but if it continuously happens over and over and over again, then you need to find someone to help you navigate why that's happening, why it's happening really regularly, and get to the bottom of it, because really your gut is super important. That's how you break down foods. That's how you absorb nutrients. That's how you make energy. Your gut is super important. Your digestive tract is super important. If you're continuously constipated, then you're not going to live your best life. You're not going to feel like the best version of yourself. So find someone that can help you figure out why.
That's exactly right, because there's prolonged effects like any of these chronic issues. And I always wonder, why doesn't the gut get enough attention in research? And I think it's out of sight, out of mind. The nose gets more attention than the gut does. And the gut is like another brain, full of blood vessels and nerves and your fuel source. And in maybe some ways, the gut, the gut has an edge over the brain because it's supplying the fuel source, right?
Yeah, you can make that argument. I mean, they're so intimately linked that you can't have one without the other. That's really the case.
So what are some maybe management strategies if someone's dealing with constipation? Well,
especially if it's chronic constipation, like we just talked about, you got to figure out why, right? Yeah. So this is where, like, investigating food sort, like, is it food related? Is it a food sensitivity? Is it a habit that you've developed, like this,
like the case that you mentioned?
Yep. Where you're like, you're in a hurry, you're not, you're putting it off, or you're embarrassed about going, whatever the reason is it something that you've basically caused through suppression of your natural urges? Is it stress or emotional?
That's right. Stress response can slow down digestion because digestion isn't a process for survival, and stress turns the brain on to pursuing survival mechanisms, and digestion is not necessary right now. And you see it a lot at the airport, post 9/11, when all the security ramped up, see it all the time. People are are going on a flight and then they're not having any bowel movements. And then they say, oh, well, it's because I didn't drink enough water. Not too often anymore. Most people are carrying water with them and then say, well, I'm sitting too much. Well, actually, most people that are traveling, they walk more when they're walking around the airports, unless it's like a crazy long flight. So we can't really blame it on a lack of activity or lack of water. It's usually just the stress response. Am I going to make it to this train and this plane and this taxi and this, Uber and
or
all
it's
of that?
suppression, or it's suppression. I want to go on the plane.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it just keeps compacting, as you said, and
Yeah.
so true. So habits. Then so management strategies are trying to, again, manage these things like stressors and habits and looking into foods. But also there are some pretty interesting nutritional strategies. I know you and I both use a lot of these. It's kind of like foundational in my office. Certain nutrients like ginger, increasing plant fiber. In most people, it can be helpful. Some people not. Cocktails of enzymes, marshmallow root extract can be a very good thing. Aloe and tannins. And you can also find tannins in dark tea and coffees and things like that. That's why.
Right.
Is it the tannins or the caffeine? I know caffeine for sure that stimulates the enteric nervous system to promote bowel movement.
Both. Yeah.
Both.
Okay. I mean, that's why they do a lot of coffee enemas, right?
Yeah. So I guess that's a strategy as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Have some guidance. That's always a fun one. But I've never had to actually prescribe a coffee enema. Have you?
I've never done it. I've had patients that do it. One patient particularly comes into mind. They called it their coffee break.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't. I did not tell them to do that. They were doing that prior to coming into my office. So,
I had a very severe case, probably the most severe case that I've ever had with constipation. I remember telling you about it and trying to get some strategies or something else. And this individual was having one bowel movement every 4 to 5 weeks for literally 40 years. And this person was in there, since the age of 10 or 15, it started. And there was a lot of mechanisms of that. There was diagnosed brain disorders and autonomic, automatic nervous system dysfunction. We found out that, and then the constipation created a whole bunch of other digestive and nutrient disorders, which further caused brain problems, which further caused the constipation.
It's like a big self-amplifying loop.
Yeah, this big loop. And, I've never even read of a case that was that consistent constipation over, decades. But with the right strategies and the right direction and neurological exercises within a couple months, there was drastic improvement in bowel movements every day. So the brain is starting to come back online as a result of that, which is really remarkable. And it's just too bad this person missed out on decades of their life. It's
better late than never, right? I'm glad you found you.
Yeah,
so.
That's true. So there can be, I guess the moral of these stories is there is solutions to it. Even with neurological disorders like Parkinson's and all that, there's a way to get relief to this and not let this constipation thing get out of hand and cause all sorts of other comorbidities.
You got it. Mm-hmm. So if this is your first time watching or listening, you got value out of this, please share it with your friends, family, loved ones, anyone you feel like might get value out of it. Again, hit like and subscribe, turn on notifications. And if you have questions, comments, anything for us, you can get a hold of us at info@brainstormingwiththedocs.com. You can get on our websites. Mine is northlakescheropractic.com. Dr. Glenn's is drgharrison.com. And stay tuned because we're going to continue to roll out new content each and every week. And you never know when we might roll out something that's applicable to you.
That's right. Well, that was good, Dr. Kolby. I look forward to the next one.
All right, buddy. Sounds good.
Bye-bye.